Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more exciting content like this. Leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts, and be sure to watch the video until the end for all the highlights. Thank you for watching. Fort San Pedro and Plaza Independencia in Cebu City. Immerse yourself in history and culture. Plaza Independencia, a place of remembrance and change. Early use. Originally, the square, which was initially called Plaza de Armas, served as a parade ground for the Spanish troops. The garrison gathered here for training and military parades. The plaza was also an important place for public proclamations and ceremonies. Renaming and significance. After the Philippines gained independence in 1898, the square was renamed Plaza Independencia. This new name symbolized pride in national self-determination and liberation from colonial rule. The Plaza Independencia developed into a central place of public life in Cebu City and served as a stage for political rallies, festivals and cultural events. Sites and atmosphere. Today, Plaza Independencia is a well-kept square with numerous trees, fountains and statues. In the center of the square is a monument to Miguel López de Legazpi, the first Spanish governor of the Philippines. Other sites in the area include the Cebu Metropolitan Cathedral, which was built in neoclassical style, and Cebu City Hall, the city's town hall. Plaza Independencia is a popular meeting place for locals and tourists and offers a pleasant atmosphere for relaxing and watching the hustle and bustle. Fort San Pedro, a bastion of history. Construction. In 1565, after the arrival of the Spaniards under Miguel López de Legazpi, the conquerors erected a temporary fortress made of wooden palisades on the coast of Cebu City. This first bastion, called the Fuerza de San Pedro, served to protect the settlement from attacks by Muslim pirates and Moros from the southern Philippines. Expansion and fortification. In the following decades, the fortress was successively expanded and reinforced. Stone walls replaced the wooden palisades and the fort acquired its characteristic triangular shape. The fort had several bastions, cannons and watchtowers, which enabled effective defense. Battles and sieges. Fort San Pedro was the scene of numerous military conflicts throughout its history. In 1565, the fort successfully withstood a siege by Raja Lapu-Lapu, the legendary leader of Mactan Island, who fell in battle against Legazpi. In the centuries that followed, Fort San Pedro was repeatedly attacked and besieged, but was always able to maintain its strategic value as a bulwark of Spanish rule in Cebu. Testimony to the past. Fort San Pedro is now a living museum that reflects the diverse history of the city of Cebu and the Philippines. Within the walls of the fort are various exhibition rooms that house archaeological finds, weapons, paintings and documents from the colonial era. Visitors can tour the casemates, the cannon platforms and the watchtower and gain an insight into the lives of the soldiers and inhabitants of the fort. History of the fort. The date of construction of the stone fort is uncertain, although it is claimed that a Jesuit named Antonio Campioni built a stone fort in 1630, and the gate of the fort bears the date 1738 along with the coat of arms of Castile and Leon. What is certain, however, is that the fort was extensively renovated in the late 19th century as part of a building program to improve Cebu. The victory of the Americans under the leadership of Commodore Dewey in the Battle of Manila Bay on May 1, 1898 marked the end of the Spanish era in the Philippines. The fort was then handed over by the Spanish to the Cebuano revolutionaries. During the American regime, Fort San Pedro became part of the American Warwick Barracks. From 1937 to 1941, the barracks was converted into a school where many Cebuano received their formal education. During World War II from 1942 to 1945, the city's Japanese residents sought refuge within its walls. When the battle to liberate the city of Cebu from the Imperial Japanese forces was defeated, the fort served as an emergency hospital for the wounded. From 1946 to 1950, Fort San Pedro was an army camp. After 1950, the Cebu Garden Club took over the fort and had the inner part converted into a miniature garden. Although the upper deck was already in ruins, it was used for various purposes. First, it served as a clinic of the city health department, then as an office of the Presidential Office of Poverty Alleviation and Community Development, and finally, the City Department of Public Works used the ruins of the lieutenant as a field office. In 1957, Mayor Sergio Osmeña Jr. announced his intention to demolish Fort San Pedro and build a new city hall on the same site. The newspapers and magazines in Cebu City and Manila spoke out against it. After being pressured to drop the plan, Osmeña backed down and declared that he would use the space behind the fort instead. That same year, the city council commissioned the religious sect, the Lamplighter, to run a city-subsidized zoo in the inner courtyard of the fort. In 1968, the facade, quarters and walls of the original structures of Fort San Pedro were so badly damaged that only the two towers were still recognizable. Plans for the restoration of the fort were initiated and the zoo was relocated. The plans and cost estimates for the fort's restoration were drawn up by architect Leonardo Concepcion, who had obtained his Master of Arts in Building Restoration in Madrid. The project was jointly funded by the Board of Travel Industry, now the Department of Tourism, the Cebu City Government and the Zonta Club of Cebu. The restoration of Fort San Pedro was an arduous, time-consuming and labor-intensive project. To restore the fort as close to the original as possible, coral stones were used that were retrieved from the sea along the coastal towns of Cebu. They were roughly cut to size and delivered to the restoration site, where workers finally ground and polished the blocks to fit together. Work progressed slowly, but after a year and a half, the facade, the main building, Cuerpo de Guardia, the corridor and the roof garden of the observatory had been faithfully restored. To make the project functional, the restored main building served as the office of the Cebu Tourism Office. The lieutenant's quarters now houses a museum. The courtyard is an open-air theater and the immediate surroundings are a park. Currently, the fort is under the care and management of the Cebu City Government as a historical park, pursuant to City Executive Order No. 0887 dated February 20, 2008, which established the Plaza Independencia, Fort San Pedro Interim Policy and Advisory Board, PIFSIPAB, and appointed Congressman Michael L. Rama as the overall custodian of Plaza Independencia and Fort San Pedro. However, the land where the fort is located belongs to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Part of the fort currently houses a museum. The fort houses legacies of the Spanish government, well-preserved Spanish artifacts such as Spanish documents, paintings and sculptures. A large statue of Legazpi and Antonio Pigafetta can be seen outside the fort walls. Fort San Pedro and Plaza Independencia in the context of history. Symbols of the colonial past. Both places are closely linked to the Spanish colonial period in the Philippines. Fort San Pedro embodies the military power and strategic importance that Cebu City held for the Spanish. Plaza Independencia, on the other hand, was a place of control and enforcement of the colonial order. Symbols of change. Throughout history, Fort San Pedro and Plaza Independencia have become symbols of change and Filipino self-determination. The renaming of the square to Plaza Independencia after independence illustrates the desire for a new beginning and the detachment from the colonial past. Significance for the present. Fort San Pedro and Plaza Independencia are now important sites of Cebu City's historical and cultural heritage. They offer an insight into the past of the city and the country and are at the same time places of encounter and public life. Visitors to these places can learn about the history of the Philippines, experience the national identity and the pride in the country's achievements.